Oklahoma passed a new law signed by the governor there, and I think that's very important to point out. So this was passed by the Senate, passed by the Senate 37-9. The House voted 76-18. It's Senate Bill 1728, the Unborn Person Wrongful Death Act.
This bill would not have passed but for the work the ACLJ put in. And your listeners probably want to know, when I say the work, I don't just mean talking about it. You literally sent lawyers like Ben Sisney and others to Oklahoma. You were in the meetings. You were in the drafting of this bill. I remember the meetings in the Senate Pro Tem's office. And what we did is really unique. With your help, we created a bill that would allow a private cause of action for the coercive nature and the coercive actions that we know these abortion providers are doing when they don't follow the proper steps. When they either trick a woman into doing it, they don't let her know all of her options, or even more deceptively, they don't let her know all of the ramifications and the clinical reasons. We know it is hard on the body in addition to the life issue, but it's just hard on the body to have these things. And it's a really creative way to hold these abortion providers accountable.
But we know from the abortion industry, we call it abortion distortion. They get treated differently than any other business, than any other organization, than any other medical provider. They never seem to have to play by the same rules that everyone else does.
If people were doing orthopedic knee surgeries without proper consent, they'd be sued out of existence tomorrow. If people were doing back surgeries without proper consent, they'd be done. We take those doctors' licenses. But for listeners from the state of Oklahoma, I mean, we remember we had an abortion doctor that lived in the nicest neighborhood in all of Oklahoma City, one of the biggest houses, that was literally burying dead babies in mass graves. I mean, this is just wicked on all forms and fashions. It breaks your heart. And to take on that industry, and all we're saying is they got to stop getting special treatment, which is what they get, and they have to be held accountable for their bad actions. And that's what this bill does. I hope this becomes the new standard, and we stop giving this industry special treatment.
When a young mother walks into an abortion clinic looking for options in a difficult situation, and then she ultimately is coerced into an abortion, and that really does happen, Jordan. We can document that. She should have legal recourse, and that's what this bill does.
So the approach that we took with the Oklahoma law is the civil remedy approach. That's not the standard approach. Usually you think of laws that impose criminal restrictions on either doing abortions under certain circumstances or in certain ways. What we wanted to do is empower the people who were the post-abortion victims, the people who have been misled or forced or taken advantage of in going through the abortion process, and now afterwards they realize that they didn't know what they were doing, they weren't able to give their consent, and they want to be able to get relief. Think about it, Jordan. In this country, we hear a whole lot about criminal rights, right? You can't waive your rights unless your waiver is fully informed and voluntary. Well, what separates abortion from murder or homicide or wrongful death? It's the consent of the mother, right? We have a scheme in this country where simultaneously you can have somebody prosecuted for attacking a pregnant woman and killing her baby because that's homicide. At the same time, Planned Parenthood could do the same thing, and it's not homicide. When
you have legal avenues for legal recourse, that discourages, that disincentivizes bad acts. Just having those protections in place, that can impact abortion in Oklahoma, just this law being there, let alone in the event that someone needs to sue under this new law.
It's pretty shocking. And Oklahoma, they cited this in their legislation and in their report when they were going through why it was necessary. In these reports, that 69% of abortions in the U.S. are performed without that full legal consent. So that would mean that there would be a lot of potential, in Oklahoma, but if this was adopted in other states, we have a question about that I'll ask you about in a minute. But that's a whole lot of folks. I mean, that's nearly 70% of abortions being performed illegally because they're not following the consent rules.